It was a moonlit night. Henry was getting ready to take a goods train to the branchline by the lake. Whenever that owl hoots, a mist rolls in, murmured Edward. There's a legend that when the mist's about, there's a ghost about too. Ha! That's just nonsense, Edward. You, of all engines, to believe in ghosts. Well, I heard about some abnormal events on Thomas's branch line. I guess he and Toby were really shaken up by it. Thomas is a silly engine with a big imagination, Edward. He could have just been seeing things. Besides, didn't they find him asleep in a siding? Toby saw the same thing as well. Besides, Percy and his crew were found in Terrence's field, unaware of their surroundings. What rubbish! How can an engine end up in Terrence's field? I don't have time for any more of your stories, Edward. Good night. Henry snorted away, hissing steam as he rolled out of the yard into the moonlit night. Take care on that old line, Henry. Henry had just forgotten about Edward and his ghost stories when a mist rolled in. Although he didn't want to admit it, he was starting to feel a bit nervous inside. Stupid bird, said Henry. Owls, mists, ghosts. Edward's past it. There's no mist. But Henry was wrong. The mist grew thicker, and Henry could hardly see ahead of him. Through the fog, a lone glowing light shone. What's that? Cried Henry. It's an amber lamp, murmured his driver. That means proceed with caution. There must be someone here. Who's there? Show yourself. No one replied. The only sound was wind whistling through the trees. Wait a minute, what's that? It looks like a notice of some sort. Beware of the viaduct. The driver was surprised. Nobody told us about a viaduct. That sign looks freshly painted too. How strange. Wait a minute. A chill went through Henry's boiler. He looked up to the sign and then to the lamp as its glowing center flickered. Driver, whispered Henry. I think someone or something is watching us. We have to move forward, Henry. At least to the nearest signal box. It isn't right for us to be reversing on the line without notice. Henry moved cautiously forward. His eyes darted from side to side with each turn of his wheels. Come on. There's no such thing as ghosts. Edward's just telling his silly stories again, he murmured to himself. When the signal box came into view, the driver stepped out to speak to the signalman. That's odd, he stammered. Look, the signal's red and the crossing gates are closed too. We're the only ones with the building supplies scheduled for tonight. Then, they felt the ground rumble underneath them and the shrill of an old engine whistle. Ghosts! Exclaimed Henry. Edward was right. We need to leave, said his driver. There's something strange about this place. Hurry up, let's get out of here, shouted Henry. By morning, the mist had died down. Henry sat in the shed, reminiscing about the night's events. First the rain, then an elephant, now that old branch line. Honestly, Henry, what aren't you afraid of? There was something out there. It was watching me. Oh, Henry, you've been listening to Edward for so long that your dome was cracked just like his. The two engines laughed and laughed. Henry felt it best not to say anything else. He worried about it all day, until his driver spoke to him later that afternoon. Workmen inspected the viaduct, but couldn't find anything wrong with it. They claimed it as being safe to travel, so now we can take our train back along the old line tonight. I don't want to go down there. It's spooky on the old line. I hear you, but it's Fat Controller's orders. He wasn't impressed that it wasn't delivered last night, so we have to deliver the supplies tonight. But, what about the Flying Kipper? We should stay here and take it. Donald has been sent to cover for us. Like it or not, we have to go. Presently, Gordon came back from taking the express. "Pah! You've got yourself all in a puff about nothing. It's just a silly branch line." "It wasn't nothing," he snapped. "There was something watching me. It followed me. Then the rails rumbled, and then there was an engine whistle." "Ha ha ha! Goodbye, Henry." Ha ha ha. When nightfall came, Henry was sizzling nicely. James grumbled as he shunted the train together. Suddenly, an owl hooted, and then Gordon thundered by making ghostly sounds. "Ooh, watch out, Henry, or the ghosts might get you. Ha ha ha." "Oh, look, Henry spooked," said a truck. "Beware the viaduct, Henry." "Shut up," snapped Henry, "and I'm not scared." But he was. A little later, the fog came down. As they approached the branchline station, they saw the amber lamp again. "Please don't tell me we're going to go past it." "We've got to, old boy. Fat Controller's orders. These supplies are important, not to mention late," said Henry's driver. Then, unknown to Henry and his crew, the gates mysteriously closed by themselves, and the signal went red, and an engine's whistle bellowed through the silenced night. The trucks had seen all, and they were spooked too. "Faster, faster, there's a ghost about!" "Stop, stop!" cried Henry. The trucks dragged Henry forward. The ground beneath Henry began to rumble once again. The unstable cliffside had just caused a landslide blocking their line. Henry braked hard and shut his eyes, but the truck smashed into the rubble, plunged off the viaduct into the ravine below. When the smoke settled, Henry opened his eyes to find he was dangerously hanging off the edge of the viaduct over the ravine. "Ah, get help! I don't want to fall! Please, driver, hurry!" The driver and fireman ran back to the station building, leaving Henry all alone. Henry looked around. There wasn't a soul in sight. "Driver, are you there?" He called out again, but there was no reply. "Driver, this isn't funny." His eyes darted back to the station, to the chilling sounds of his crew screaming. He was about to yell out when...
"I told you not to come down here. You should have listened to my warnings."
Henry stared up at what looked to be an old tank engine, with all its paint roasted over and boiler tubes shooting out of his tanks in every direction.
"I don't like engines who don't listen. You know, Henry, maybe I'll give you the same punishment as I gave your little green friend when he disturbed me in my lamp the other night."
"Oh, please, leave me alone. I promise I won't ever come down here again. I promise."
"Don't make promises you can't keep, Henry. If it's not you, it'll be some other engine. I'm going to make an example out of you for the next engine that tries to come back down my branch line ever again."
I'm sorry. Just please leave me alone. I won't tell the Fat Controller about this place. Just let me go.
"Like I said, you should have never come down my branch line, Henry." "You and I answered different. Deemed failed engines. Only I never got a chance, unlike you."
What do you mean?
"Your controller knew of my troubles. I got the short end of the stick. He left me here to rust and got a new tank engine to replace me. When I saw you arrive on the railway, I knew you'd have the same fate as I did. Fat Hat didn't care about you, so I organized a line of trucks that same winter you tested out the special rush code."
You left that train on the main line?
"Of course I did. Where else would those trucks come from, Henry? I wanted Fat Hat to see the pain he caused me But to my surprise, he sent you to crew. I was denied any sort of repairs, and here you are, a steaming excuse of an engine. You can't hide from what you really are. No matter how many rebuilds you'll get, you'll always be that failed engine.
I'm not failed
We
anymore.
both know what you really are, don't we, Henry? You're just a steaming hot pot of scrap. You and all the rest of those engines will pay for what was done to me and will fall onto the head of your dear Sir Topham Hatt. Consider this a warning, Henry. The Fat Controller might not be able to fix you this time.
Henry? Henry! Driver, run back and get help. It's an emergency. Come on, we've got to get him up. Does anyone even know how he ended up out here? Henry woke bruised and bemused in a field by the junction for the branch line. He looked over to see Gordon and James frantically trying to get him safely back onto the rails again. Soon, the Fat Controller came to see Henry. Well, Henry, do you have any idea how you managed to get yourself out here? Where's here, sir? You're at the junction for Harwin Lake, Henry. Don't you remember leaving last night? No, sir, said Henry, feeling very exhausted. Well, Henry, what do you remember about last night? Henry told him everything. The Fat Controller pondered for a moment. He wiped his eyes and turned around to Gordon and James. Gordon, your express is waiting for you back at the station. James, I need you to take Henry to the works. I'll meet you both there once you've arrived. That evening, James shunted Henry down into the work shed by Percy. The Fat Controller stepped out of his car to see the two engines. Thank you, James. Off the Tidmouth with you now. He watched James set off until he was out of sight. He then turned to the other two engines. Well, you two, it's time we talked about what you've seen. But that's another story.